Special guest here today. For those of you that have not met him, he is a real legend in our industry. Ran the Turner operation here, served on the AGC board, and probably more than anything has given us a two-star general in his son. Say hello to Tony Cuccolo. Tony? The purpose of this meeting every year is to try to inform your thinking as you start your strategic planning. The narrow purpose of our firm, and we are about as narrowly niched a company as you could be. We work exclusively in the commercial construction segment for general and specialty contractors and also for their trade associations. Our narrow purpose is to support CEOs and senior executives with their strategy and leadership portfolio. It is our very strong belief that strategy and leadership are the exclusive purview of the top level, the C-suite, if you will. And so we feel our job is to be a support resource in every way we can, bringing you market information, bringing you tools to help with that portfolio. We define strategy as finding a direction for the company and allocating the resources tactically to reach a desired future position, and leadership as requiring the necessary changes, as being able to make those necessary changes that get you to the desired future. And the whole purpose of our meeting today is to give you both information and tools to do that. And then to also talk about the opportunity that we see on the horizon. And I think when you hear Dan's talk, it will set up beautifully for maybe we can reclaim some of the things we've lost in our industry relative to control of our workforce and relative to our margins and the type of things that we take big risk for. So that is our purpose today. And I understand that Dan is here. Fabulous. With that, it is my great privilege to wait one more minute and talk a little bit about ConstructionCitizens.com, which is a web-based strategy to form a community of us to work on the most important issue we have, which is reclaiming our construction workforce. And I want to talk just a little bit about that in my part a little later on. And secondly, to talk about C3, the exciting initiative started initially by AGC, now supported by many more organizations, that is the answer to how we create the workforce of the future. It is morphing from being an initiative to being an organization, and that type of structure is put in place. So with that, I'm going to start introducing Dan Bellow. We don't have any music to play, so there is nobody that has made our industry stand taller in the last several years than our next speaker. Today, he is the president of Jones Lang LaSalle Houston, having been head of the Staubach office here. But in addition to his real estate expertise, where he has climbed every mountain in the business, he gives an enormous amount to this community in terms of his leadership at the Greater Houston Partnership, where he was president, and at the Center for Houston Future, where he is a board member, and in numerous other organizations. As you will see in a moment, he's an excellent speaker with a real hand on the pulse beat of our market. Welcome, please, Dan Bellow.
Going to get me mic'd up like I'm in a presidential debate or something. One gaffe and I'll be dead, right? All I have to do is speak about immigration reform, Stan, and I can't get elected president, right?
I don't know.
Ask Rick Perry.
We'll see about Obama, though.
He tried to speak up about it.
Just pick in your pocket, Dan.
I do have to acknowledge some folks in this room that I've worked with for many, many years. Jim Kohler's here, whom I've known forever. Wire it up properly. I've actually known Pat Kiley forever, and Stan, had the pleasure of working with him, particularly on issues with the Great Houston Partnership, the Center for Houston's Future, issues like immigration reform, which are so important to our community and to Houston's continued growth. So it's good to see everybody here this morning. I'm glad to be here, and I thought what I'd do is first talk a little bit about Houston, because underneath everything in the real estate market, underneath everything in the construction market, is an understanding of where we are going in Houston, Texas, where we're going to end up, and what can we expect for the next few years. The hardest thing in business is to plan for more than a quarter, right? We need, in this city, we need long-term thinkers, and we need business people who plan 3 years, 5 years, 10 years out. Because if you plan your business on the next quarter, you know what happens. You're growing, you're pulling back, you're growing, you're pulling back, you're growing, you're pulling back. We're in an economy in Houston right now that I think will allow for some long-term thinking. And let me show you why. In the last recession, we lost 116,000 jobs, okay? But already today, we've recovered 176,000 jobs. So we're way past the number of jobs we've lost. We've already gone past the peak we had in 2007, which was our peak employment area. That was probably a time in the construction industry when you recall there was a little more activity going on, a little more construction taking place in our community. Historically, Houston has, I like to think we average about 60,000 jobs a year in growth. That's a really good number. In my opinion, I'm comfortable at 60,000 jobs. That's 2.5% growth in our community. When we start talking 100,000 jobs, which we're likely to do this year, we did over 85 last year, we're likely to do 100,000 jobs this year. When you do that many jobs, your economies, in my opinion, in Houston, we're getting quite hot again. But we're also growing our base. So to be able to sustain that kind of growth could be possible going forward. The Purchasing Managers Index is one of the key indicators for job growth in Houston. This affects the industrial market. If you build metal buildings or tilt wall buildings, this is an index that you should keep your eye on. This shows the sentiment of purchasing managers for manufacturing companies. And whenever it's above 50, there's hiring and expansion in the manufacturing sector. That's what's taking place today. We've been above 50 for quite a while now. We actually bumped above 50 very quickly in mid-2009, and since 2010 it maintained levels above 50. We're bumping 60% right now. So there's strong confidence in manufacturing. And this morning I was in the industrial meeting. The reason I just walked in the door here, our industrial team meets every Wednesday morning at Jones Lang LaSalle. And I asked the question, because I have slides in here on the industrial market, I said, how is the market doing? With the exception of Southeast Houston, where they overbuilt some huge boxes, I'm talking about million square foot boxes, that just didn't really fit the market. With the exception of Southeast Houston, the market's doing extremely well. Okay? And there's demand for crane-ready metal buildings. That's been the hot market in Houston probably in the last 12 to 18 months. The rig count, I would encourage you, if you do not subscribe to the Baker Hughes Index, it comes out every Friday. Log on to Baker Hughes. Make sure they send you the email update. We track the rig count. This is the most important number in Houston, Texas. This is, of course, the price of oil and natural gas is what determines the rig count. But this is the big number that you should pay attention to. It's fallen 8% this quarter. That's a little bit of a concern to me. I'm not sure it's going to stop anybody in the oil services industry, but it's fallen 8% already this quarter. I think the fall off is primarily due to natural gas. natural gas drilling, natural gas prices. But the rig count is so important to this city that you should keep an eye on it. We need to stabilize that rig count, above 1850, and we're going to be fine in the long term. But this is a big number. We got to keep our eyes on it. Single-family home sales are rising. This again affecting the construction industry and trades. There are lot development sales and single-family home sales, taking place. New home construction in Houston, and that's a good thing. We're sort of leading the nation in that category simply because of the number of people that are coming into Houston. Here's some lessons of the past. This is a long-term chart of the price of West Texas Intermediate. If you recall, and from looking at this room, there might be some people in here as old as me. But if you recall the 80s, okay, in 1984, when we entered the recession in the 80s, the energy industry laid off 250,000 workers. 250,000. Well, that's when oil went from $30 a barrel down to $2 a barrel, right? And oil stayed really low for a long period of time. So that hiring never really occurred. This is why today in the energy industry, there's a real dearth of talent between that, age 50 and age 60 tenure. And that's why people are being encouraged to stay on the companies a little longer instead of retiring right now, because they need the talent, they need the workforce. But it took forever for oil to recover in terms of price. But if you look, of course there's a couple of spikes here, but the recovery is much quicker. In other words, you didn't see the price drop and just go flat again, and I don't think we will over a long period of time. The price of oil is really important, and from everybody I've talked to, from Dan Pickering at Tudor Holt Pickering, as well as folks like Gary Luquette at Chevron and others, it appears that if oil will just stay above $70 to $80 a barrel, everything's going to be fine. There's not going to be layoffs. There's not going to be cutbacks in development budgets, and I think the industry's going to continue to do well. So the lessons from the past are, in the 82 to 87 recession, we lost 1 in every 7 jobs in this region. That's why it took us forever to dig out of that hole. Now we're talking about a loss in 1 of every 22 jobs. That's a big difference. That shows a lot more stability and, of course, a lot of growth in the base over that period of time. Developers overbuilt in the recession of 82 to 87. Right now, developers are not overbuilding. In the real estate business, you're not starting many spec buildings. There's very few. You'll hear about them. Skanska started one, Granite Property started one. Both entities with their own capital, okay? With their own source of capital. They don't need to borrow. But if you need to go borrow to build a building today, you better have a lead tenant or you're not going to get it kicked off the ground. Or you're going to pledge. We all learn lessons with personal liability, right? Jointly and severely liable was the old term. And if you sign personally ever again, you should almost be taken to the institution right away. But that's what it's taken today. If you want to start a spec building, you better put up plenty of assets to borrow even 50% of the construction cost. So, developers are not overbuilding. Our market is tightening in all areas. And Houston has finally become very attractive to the international investment community and the domestic investment community as a place to buy real estate. We added 71 million square feet of office space in the 82 to 87 recession. We had 50 million square feet vacant, by the way. That was a rather tough time in trying to lease up office space. This time the region's added only 15 million square feet. So a big difference between 82 and 87. Why am I saying that? Because look, it's up here. I'm telling you, even I, the lessons I learned in the 80s have caused me to be so conservative, it's ridiculous. I'm always kind of giving it that over the shoulder and still working that extra hour on every day, because I still believe it could turn tomorrow, right? That's just was ingrained in us in that period of time. But we are in a different world. This is a different recession. We have recovered differently than in the past. And it might be time to think about, the future.